Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. You know, when you have principles, those principles should apply across the board, or if you have values, all right? So let's say nowadays we're told that we have to believe in diversity, which is our strength. We have to believe in equity. We have to believe in inclusion and all these things. Well, I would agree to believe in those if those are applied across the board. But these are applied against certain groups for certain groups. So that means they are not really principles. So I do not subscribe to them. Another way of seeing the new values of the society that are pushed onto us are be kind. This is another one, be kind. Well, I want to be truthful before I'm kind. I want to be just before I'm kind, okay? And again, be kind only with certain kind of groups, entities. With others, you can be if you don't want to be kind, that's fine. This is what I get from weasels here in this society. I would believe them if, okay, you want to be kind, okay, then you have to be kind with that, we're going to be kind with that. No, you're only kind with this group here. With this group here, you're not kind. So I can't subscribe with this because what if I'm on the other side? Should I employ the same kind of logic? Be kind with this, but not kind with you? So, you know, it's not really like that. They ask us to be kind with everyone, but they are not kind with us, if you know what I mean. So I have this little article here he's a Russian German, I guess, or at least he lives in Germany and he knows the Russians and the Germans. And he's making this mistake. In his assessment of the Russians, who he calls that violence is part of the Russian mindset. So basically the Russians are violent by their mindset. If you would say that, if this weasel who lives in Germany would say that towards any other group in Germany, say, okay, that group over there, their group's mindset is of violence, or I don't know, mistreating people or thieves or lazy, this guy will be out of the job. So that's there's certain groups that you can use this kind of terms, but others cannot. Even if it's, or even if it doesn't, you still can use it against certain groups that you don't like at this point. Remember George Orwell's 1984 dystopian novel, right? 1984, the 5 minutes of hate, where we are all supposed to go in a room and hate whomever and whatever they put in front of us right here. Now it's open range, open season for Russia. Tomorrow might be Romania, the next day could be France, and whomever they tell us. So let's see what how this guy is going to use his kindness towards the evil Russians. But if he used the same thing as a group towards anything else, he would be cancelled yesterday. So let's see. This article comes from European Pravda. It's from Wednesday, 11th of January 2023. And I'm quoting this guy. Violence is part of Russian mindset. Not many understand that, but he does. Interview with Russian-German expert. So this is the expert right here. All right, this is the expert. You got him? All right. Maybe he is an expert, but from what he said right here is I would say, those guys are they like money and they like finance. You know what I mean? Or those guys are just lazy. They show up at work late. You can't count on them. What if this guy, and I would say, you guys don't understand their mindset. I do. I tell you. Not many understand that. All right. Let's see. This guy's name is Sergei Sumlieni. Is an unusual German expert. Ooh, you think so? Unusual? I think so. He was born and raised in Russia. He moved to Germany and became a citizen due to his German ancestry. He gave up his Russian passport. He works in Berlin and heads the European Resilience Initiative Center. So he's a guy who gets some money from some Soros and others, I'm assuming. Okay? Now, Sergei unconditionally stands with Ukraine. Good for him. and admits that he does not belong to the mainstream of German experts who have not yet overcome their psychological bond with Russia. That means the Germans are so tired they don't understand actually. Let Sergei tell them, because he knows just because he was born in a different country. Okay, it's like I tell you, hey, none of you know anything about Romanians, but I can tell you, I'm the only one. I'm the accredited, legal, authorized voice here because I was born over there. Okay? Well, I might know certain things, but I don't deny you the right to know. You know what I mean? But this guy says, no, they don't understand. I do. All right, thank you very much, Sergei. So the Germans have to overcome their psychological bonds with Russia. He does not doubt that Germany will make a decision eventually and hand over tanks to Ukraine. They already did, buddy. But anyway, the most complicated issue that the Germans have, you guys Germans have a complicated issue, to overcome is that the murders, rapes, and other war crimes in Ukraine support the vast majority of Russians. Did you hear that? Imagine that he would say that about other nations, let's say some African nations. He was out of the job yesterday. So I repeat, the most complicated issue that the Germans have to overcome is that the murders, rapes, and other crimes, other war crimes in Ukraine support the vast majority of Russians. We met in the Europravda studio in Kiev when blah 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 blue blue blue. Okay, let's see what German politicians think about Russia's defeat in the war. German politicians are frightened by the thought of Russia's defeat in the war because they cannot comprehend it. But how do you see it, Sergei? What will happen after? Yeah, that's an adult thought. When you think, okay, I'm going to do this move in chess, but what's going to happen if I do it? Okay, I'm not doing it. Pièce touchée, pièce jouée. You know, you touch the piece, you have to move it. So you keep your hands under your butt. I'm not going to move. Okay, if I move that, what's going to be next? And then if I move that, what's going to be next? What's going to move that, what's going to be next? That's how you do it as a chess player. If a guy is a juvenile, oh, my bad. Too late, boy. Too late. Now the consequences. Bang, boom, bam, joom, bong. All right, so, yes, that's what it is, Sergei. They cannot imagine Russia's defeat, let alone a defeat that would end up with Russian collapse. Yeah, because they think of the consequences. Russia collapse. You know what it is? They have nuclear weapons, my friend. Who's going to take care of those? I mean, he's just a juvenile right here. Germans are scared even to think about it, so it is better not to think about it. The opposite outcome, like reconciliation with Russia, is welcomed by many. I wonder why. First, they cannot imagine how the Ukrainian nation, which for many Germans did not exist, correct, until recently, wins the war against a nuclear state. No, it doesn't win, it's losing it. Take the map, look around it, and you're gonna find out the Russians are winning, not losing, because they got Ukrainian territory and the Ukrainians don't have Russian territory. First. Secondly, Russia doesn't fight Ukraine. Russia fight some Ukrainians on the territory of Ukraine with the weapons and intelligence and blah 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 of NATO. Got it, Sergei? Pretty naive, this Sergei. But he's the leader. What was his little thing? He's what? He is the guy who is the, let me get his title, man. I mean, we can't forget about that one. He works in Berlin and heads the European Resilience Initiative Center. He heads it, all right? But he doesn't know shit, basically. So, secondly, they cannot realize that the crimes committed by the Russian military in Ukraine are actually part of the Russian political worldview. Did you hear that? I want to repeat again. The Germans cannot realize that the crimes committed by the Russian military in Ukraine are actually part of the Russian political worldview. That's how they are. That's how they view the world. They do not realize how much Russians do support such actions. The actions, I have to tell you, are the world crimes. Right? Is that what I say? The crimes committed by Russians. So actually the Russians do support such actions. He knows. Sergei knows. All of them. He talks about not some, not many, all. They say Russians. All right? He says Russians do support those. This guy is very... How old is this? 7? on violence as a religion of Russia. So now he says that violence is a religion for Russia. It's just inside, within the Russian spirit. This guy, imagine he would talk about, let's say, about the blacks in the United States and calling them different, they're like this, like this. Like he stereotypes this guy, he generalizes all these things. Or let's say he talks about, the Jews. He talks about, the Latinos, the Hispanics, any other group outside of the 5 minutes of hate. Now, it was easier for me, he says, to understand the actions of Russians in Ukraine because I was born in Russia. Okay, that means you're the same as them. How come you're not? I mean, if you were born and raised in Russia, aren't you a violent too, as you said in the title here, that violence is part of Russian mindset? How come you don't have that mindset anymore? Because you're peaceful like the Germans with the Second World War? Did I say that? Or with the Prussians? With the First World War? Damn! What's going on here? So what mindset you got now? The German or the Russian? Which one is worse? Because you can't escape. We all have our own crimes, more or less. Sergei, smack, grow up. So he's got a German. He understands that because he lived in Russia, but he's not like them. He's like what? Like the Germans? And I think as you jump from one shit to another shit. But hey, this is Sergei, the head of, again, I gotta memorize that, European Resilience Initiative Center. This guy, okay, I don't know how old he is, 32, 35? I'm not age bashing, but I've been 35 and I know how much I knew then, and I read a lot, and I've been in many things. I don't think this weasel was more than a few rooms around. Anyway, let's move on. But I'm assessing based on his statements, not, I don't have information on him. I didn't gather information on him yet. Now, let's see. What's this? He says that in general, he says, I didn't doubt that Russia would attack Ukraine. I understood that destroying Ukraine is a fundamental value of Russian statehood. So that's the way they think. Destroy Ukraine. Imagine that this guy is a Westerner. Now, in general, for a normal person, not for the Russians, and even more so for a German, it is terrifying to understand who the Russians are as a political community. Russians, all of them. He can't, is like those people, I can name them, I can, as a group, that speak in this kind of terms. I never did that. I always do that. You don't talk like that. You say sometimes, most of the times. Why? Because you don't always do that. You don't, never don't do this or something. But this is an example of a person who doesn't, from this to here, it's not a lot of filter or communication. I think it's a lot of wind inside of his brain, but whatever he's got, not brain, the cranium. So, again, he talks about Russians. Again, Russian worldview is violence, which is a top of values in Russia. Not wealth, not health, not fun, but violence itself is the basic value. Did you know that? Now you know. And now, the history of Russia taught Russians that power is useless, money is useless, life is useless. What is this guy talking about? Today you are Stalin's people's commissar and tomorrow you are in the basement. Today you are an oligarch and tomorrow you drink polonium in your tea. He talks like political assassinations were never ordered by anybody but the Russians, if that occurred. Talking about the polonium, you know what I mean? It's unbelievable. You ask him a few questions about Mossad, and he's going to be squeaking and leaving and running because he's going to lose his post and his money. So, you know what I mean? Ask him about that. Mossad. Not only Mossad. It's not only Mossad involved in these things, but anyway, he's so naive. But he's the head of European reconciliation, whatever. This is why the cult of war, disguised as the cult of victory, is popular there. They honor Victory Day not because they saved their country. The idea of victory of the Russians is that we destroyed everyone. Our tanks march across Europe. Russia also has a cult of sexualized violence, including the "we can do it again" car stickers. Hey, how many Russians died in the Second World War? Do you remember? More Russians than anybody else. They say what? 40 million, 20 million, 30 million people, civilians and military. What do you think? They should not celebrate kicking the butt of the guys who created produced so much pain and destruction? What are you talking about? They have a country. The country was attacked. The country was supposed to be wiped by the Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe and the SS. What are you talking about? This is an ignorant guy right here. But hey, it's just they celebrate victory. Yes, as the other ones celebrate their D-Day. Have you heard about D-Day? Probably you do all kind of this for D-Day. But for Stalingrad, which turned the war, nothing. You don't know anything about anything. You see, I'm using words like him. Nothing and all. Again, I got caught into it. Anyway, but that's what happens. You know, that's that saying that if you argue with a crazy, don't argue with the crazy, because the people who are watching you, they can't make a difference anymore. The same. Right now I'm arguing with a weasel, and with this I'm becoming one of them. You can't tell the difference because I'm so... Anyway, so likewise in the current war, he says, Ukrainians see victory when their country is saved and there are no more threats. Russians see victory when they enter the city, burn everything, rape, and move on. Destroying something is very better for them than stealing. They demonstrate is even better for them than stealing. They demonstrate their power in such a way, and I'm quoting, to steal is not so relevant because today you have it and tomorrow someone will steal it from you. Moreover, very educated Russians fully share this concept of cannibalism. They're cannibals too, if you didn't know. Representatives of business, science, and culture, integrated in the Western world. They see nothing wrong in destroying Mariupol or Kiev, striking a nuclear attack on Ukraine in those created in Russian filtration camps in torture. I think these are not human. Is that what you're telling me, Sergei? And he said the Germans cannot believe it is about Russia's desire to physically destroy the Ukrainian nation and turn those who remain alive into Russians. Is this familiar with the fact that the Russians communicated with the Western countries, including Germany, where he lives, and with Americans trying to solve the problem of the security concerns of Russia because of NATO and Ukraine? Is he aware of that? Is he aware that the Ukrainian government was toppled by some traitors who work with outside services to topple a democratically elected government, legitimate, of Yanukovych, as corrupt as it was? Is he aware of that? And then immediately those traitors, because you're a traitor if you work with outside services to overthrow a legitimate government. Remember that one. And then immediately that government was recognized by the Western countries. Is he aware of this? On Germany's attitude towards EU membership. Well, it's even though Putin radicalized Russians similarly to Hitler in the 1930s, the outcome will be different. So again, Putin is Hitler. The Russians are not human, seem to be, and everything they do is bad. Now, you tell me about this guy. How about tolerance? Remember tolerance? How about inclusion? How about equity? How about knowledge? How about brain? So this is the people you might have to argue or stay across from the table and try to negotiate a peace settlement with this kind of individual. I mean, this guy is an example of really people with power. He's the head of that organization. I don't know how big it is, but he's the head. I met people like him with power. And you don't have to meet them, just turn on the television and you can hear them speaking over there, and people that have real power. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Sergey. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.